Everyone wants a loyal friend, someone they can rely on, someone they can lean on in times of trouble. But what does it take to be a true friend to somebody? Stay tuned as we look into this topic. Hello everybody, thanks for watching this video. I hope you and your family are well at this time. If you do like this video, consider hitting that like button or maybe share it with a friend so that we can try and reach as many people as possible. So today we're going to look at the subject of friendship, and we're going to look at a wonderful friendship from the Bible, of course, between a man called David, who is very famous, and a man called Jonathan, who isn't as famous as much, but definitely should be when you read his story. This wonderful friendship should help us all in our own lives with our own friends, and how we can be better friends to other people. So just a little background about the two people who have mentioned. We've got David. You probably know him through David and Goliath, the man who threw the stone at the giant. Also, he was the king of Israel, King David, a wonderful warrior man. And in 1 Samuel 16, the prophet Samuel comes to David and his family and tells him that he will be the future king of Israel. He wasn't the king at the time, but this was done in secret to just the family. And then we look at the man called Jonathan, the not so known man, and he was the son of the current king of Israel, called King Saul. Very powerful man. And just looking at it, he was the eldest of Saul's sons, so he'd be thinking, when my dad dies, I may be the future king. So please remember that in the background as we go later on. And just for a second, we have one man, David, who the prophet Samuel has told him he will be the future king. And we have Jonathan, who potentially thinks he may be in line. So you might be putting these two together thinking, how are these going to be friends? Well, stay tuned until the end of this video and we'll look at why they were truly wonderful friends. I've got 7 points for us today. The first point is the introduction, and the next 6 are all things about a friendship that we can all learn from. So if you're ready, let's dive into it. I must say, we have a lot of scripture today, so please stay with us. Hopefully you'll get something from this. Point number 1, the introduction. In 1 Samuel 18, 1 through 3 it reads, "Now it came about when he had finished speaking to Saul that the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as himself. Saul took him that day and did not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself." This passage was directly after David had just killed Goliath. So what a wonderful impression David must have made on Jonathan for him to use these terms. Do you, or have you, ever used these terms to describe a friend of yours? Would you ever say that your souls were knitted together, or that you loved him or her as yourself? These are very powerful and moving feelings, and these two had just met. Think about that, they just met, but these are the words that are used here. So this is the foundation, this is where it all started. So let's look at point number 2, what led after the introduction. Number 2 is truth. Always vital in a friendship. Again, we're in Samuel 1 Samuel 19, 1 through 6 reads, "Now Saul told Jonathan his son and all his servants to put David to death. But Jonathan, Saul's son, greatly delighted in David. So Jonathan told David, saying, Saul, my father is seeking to put you to death. Now therefore, please be on guard in the morning, and stay in a secret place and hide yourself. I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where you were, and I will speak with my father about you. If I find anything out, then I will tell you. Then Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul his father, and said to him, Do not let the king sin against his servant David, since he has not sinned against you, and since his deeds have been very beneficial to you. For he took his life in his hand and struck the Philistine Goliath. And the Lord brought about a great deliverance for all Israel. You saw it and rejoiced. Why then will you sin against innocent blood by putting David to death without a cause? Saul listened to the voice of Jonathan, and Saul vowed, As the Lord lives, he shall not be put to death. Jonathan stood up for what was right, even though it was against his father. This could have had terrible consequences for Jonathan. He could have been cast out, or even worse, he could have been put to death. I know that's very strong to say, but he was going against what the king had said. So this could have been terrible news for Jonathan. So what we can learn from this was we must obey God rather than man. Even if it's a friend's father, mother, we must obey God first. Jonathan saved David's life by being brave, and David's life was saved by having a faithful friend. Next, number 3 is loyalty. Now, before we read the scripture, a bit of context before this passage. So King Saul, Jonathan's dad, is trying to kill David again. David has fled and is hiding, and has asked Jonathan to tell his father that he's gone to attend a feast with his family, and that's the reason why he wouldn't be able to attend the feast at the king's house. Again, Jonathan was loyal to his friend. 3 days later, the plan was to meet with an update. And in the scripture, 1 Samuel 20 through 22 reads, I will shoot 3 arrows to the side, as though I shot at a target, and behold, I will send the lad, saying, Go find the arrows. If I specifically say to the lad, Behold, the arrows are on this side of you, get them, then come, for there is safety for you and no harm. But if I say to the youth, Behold, the arrows are beyond you, go, for the Lord has sent you away. On the second day of the feast with the king, the day before the third day when Jonathan and David would meet, King Saul asked Jonathan where David was, and Jonathan told him what David had told Jonathan to say, again showing his loyalty. And it reads in 1 Samuel 20, 30 through 34. Then Saul's anger burned against Jonathan, and he said to him, You son of a perverse, rebellious woman, do I not know that you are choosing the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives on the earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established. Therefore now send and bring him to me, for he must surely die. But Jonathan answered Saul his father and said to him, Why should he be put to death? What has he done? Then Saul hurled his spear at him to strike him down. So Jonathan knew that his father had decided to put David to death. Then Jonathan arose from the table in fierce anger, and did not eat food on the second day of the new moon, for he was grieved over David, because his father had dishonoured him. Have you ever been grieved so much about a friend that you haven't eaten? This leads us nicely on to the next point, which is point number 4, grief. It reads in 1 Samuel 20, 35 through 38. Now it came about in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field for the appointment with David. This is on the third day when they decide to meet, and the little lad was with him. He said to his lad, Run, find now the arrows which I am about to shoot. As the lad was running, he shot an arrow past him. When the lad reached the place of the arrow which Jonathan had shot, Jonathan called after the lad and said, Is not the arrow beyond you? And Jonathan called after the lad, Hurry, be quick, do not stay. Now we need to mention something in this verse and retrace it back to what we mentioned in the previous one. It says in verse 36, he shot an arrow past him. Now if you look back at what we mentioned a minute ago in verse 22, but if I say to the youth, behold, the arrows are beyond you, go, for the Lord has sent you in waif. This meant it wasn't safe for David to return back, as Saul was trying to kill him. Very sad. And next we read in 1 Samuel 20, 41 through 42, it reads, when the lad was gone, David arose from the south side and fell on his face to the ground and bowed 3 times, and they kissed each other and wept together, but David wept the more. Jonathan said to David, go in safety, inasmuch as we have sworn to each other in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord will be between me and you, and between my descendants and your descendants forever. Then he rose and departed, while Jonathan went into the city. Now this is a beautiful passage. As you can see, David and Jonathan, it looks like they have to go separate ways, as it's not safe for David to return, as Jonathan's dad is still pursuing to kill him. But let's just look at some of the words used in this passage to describe the feelings and the emotions between these wonderful friends. And let's see if we've, or you, myself, have ever had these for our friends. It says, well, first, David bowed 3 times in front of Jonathan. Now, this to me indicates a sign of respect. And it says they kissed each other. Now, this is obviously purely a brotherly kiss. So don't start thinking anything different than that. And it says they wept together, again showing the feelings that they have for each other. And it said David wept the more. Now when I seen this, I highlighted it and thought, I wonder why that was. Maybe it seems to David that Jonathan was going more out his way to show love and do things and care for David. And sometimes that's how it feels. We all need a friend who looks and cares and is always looking over our shoulder, and when that person can't be around, the person who receives that love and that friendship, it affects that person a lot more. Maybe sometimes me and yourself watching might take this friend for granted, but when that relationship, or if you go separate ways, the person who received it, it affects them a lot more. And this passage, it said David wept the more. So maybe he was realizing what this loss of Jonathan would be and how this would impact him. So this is a marvelous passage of pure brotherly love and friendship. Next, we look at number 5, which is encouragement. Again, we're in the same book. 1 Samuel 23, 16 through 17 reads, and Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David at Horesh, and encouraged him in God. Thus he said to him, do not be afraid, because the hand of Saul my father will not find you, and you will be king over Israel, and I will be next to you. And Saul my father knows that also. Could be a reason why Saul is trying to kill him, because he's jealous of knowing that David will be on the throne after him. But we all need encouragement in times of trouble. It's easy to get sidetracked in life and sometimes forget God's promises and faithfulness, but we need to stay strong and have that godly person behind us who brings these things to remembrance of what God has promised. And what was Jonathan's response to David being king and not him? Remember from the beginning? Did he get mad, upset, slam the table, run off in a fit and befriended David? That could be, I wouldn't say a natural response, but definitely a fleshly response that we all would have, because the flesh wants things, maybe wants success, a bit of pride that's in us all. And let's see what his response was. Jonathan said, "You will be king over Israel, and I will be next to you." Wait a second. Wow. He was so happy that his friend was going to be the next king. He removed all the personal gains or the wants, and he purely was happy that his friend was getting something and not him. I mean, have I ever felt this way about a friend getting something and maybe we wanted the same thing? I mean, this just shows Jonathan's true heart. He was just wonderful and a caring, considerate, kind. We can probably sum it up with this one line: he enjoyed his friendship over his personal gain. Point number 6, a hard one for us all to do. Keeping a promise. 1 Samuel 20:15 through 17 reads, "You shall not cut off your loving kindness from my house forever, not even when the Lord cuts off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth." So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, "May the Lord require it at the hands of David's enemies." Jonathan made David vow again because of the love for him, because he loved him as he loved his own life. Again, marvelous line. Loved him as he loved himself. So did David keep the promise? Well, let's flick across to 2 Samuel 9 verse 1. Then David said, "Is there yet anyone left of the house of Saul, that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Verse 3, the king said, "Is there not anyone of the house of Saul to whom I may show the kindness of God?" And Ziba said to the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan who is crippled in both feet." David said to him, "Do not fear, for I will surely show kindness to you for the sake of your father Jonathan, and will restore to you all the land of your grandfather Saul, and you shall eat at my table regularly. All that belonged to Saul and to all his house I have given to your master's grandson. You and your sons and your servants shall cultivate the land for him, and you shall bring in the produce so that your master's grandson may have food. Nevertheless, Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, shall eat at the table regularly." What favour David showed this man. Jonathan's kindness to David blessed his son even after he had died. As when we read this, Jonathan had died. David kept his promise even though Jonathan wasn't around to check. Sometimes in life it's never easy to keep a promise, but imagine if you promised someone something and they was no longer here. It might be easier to maybe not follow through, because I mean, they're not here to, not here to find out whether you've done it or not. So this shows unbelievable loyalty from David to follow through to this promise to bless Jonathan's family, and this is exactly what he did. Next, we're on to the last point, number 7, the chant. Now, King David wrote a lot of the Psalms, so as we look into this, it's written like a psalm, and this is in 2 Samuel 1, 22 through 26. And before we read it, let's remember this has come after all our other scriptures, so all the rest has happened, and this is what David is writing about his experience. So let's what this says. "From the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan did not turn back, and the sword of Saul did not return empty. Saul and Jonathan, beloved and pleasant in their life, and in their death they were not parted. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. O daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothes you luxuriously in scarlet, who puts ornaments of gold on your apparel. How have the mighty fallen in the midst of the battle? Jonathan is slain on your high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. You have been very pleasant to me. Your love to me was more wonderful than the love of a woman. Saul, as we mentioned, tried to kill David several times, and yet David chose, please remember this word, chose, to remember the good things of Saul and what he did as a king instead of those terrible moments. What a guy David was to do this. I mean, think about if you was in David's shoes and somebody kept trying to attack you to kill you, would you write positively about them in a poem you're writing? This shows marvelous heart from David, and he chose. We're not saying he forgot the things, but he chose to remember the good things, which is a wonderful trait to have. And David and Jonathan's relationship is summed up in verse 26, and let's see what that says. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. You have been very pleasant to me. Your love to me was more wonderful than the love of woman. Again, pure brotherly love. Let's just wrap this all up with a little bit of a conclusion. There was one major factor in this whole relationship working, and that the relationship's foundation was on God. So many times it says they made a covenant, them two and God, keeping the promises. To be a friend like Jonathan, you need to be loyal. And loyal doesn't mean doing something what feels good or choosing who you prefer. It's about seeking truth. And the source of truth is God and His Word. Seek it today. Thanks for watching this video, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully we can all learn something from Jonathan and David's relationship, whether you're a Jonathan to someone or whether you're a David to somebody. These principles can help us all build better and stronger relationships with our friend. Maybe if you're a David and you've got a Jonathan in your life, maybe it's the time to appreciate what this person does and what this person means for you. Personally, I don't have loads of friends, which is perfectly fine by me. I don't need many, just need the right ones. That I have a couple of wonderful friends who I know they'll be there for me, and you are blessed if you have people in your lives who love you and care for you and protect you, just like Jonathan and David. So stay safe and join us next week for another topic. Thanks for watching. Bye.